Hey, White Sox fans. All right, it's Southside Sox Podcast number 97. And let's just get right to the news. Let me announce our merger. Come on. Nobody's going to merge with us. Look at these eyes. Look at these crazy eyes. Hey, listen, we always say what we mean. We mean what we say. And, hey, hopefully you dig it. We've been around for 97 podcasts on the mothership. So, hey, keep on listening. We appreciate that you listen, read, watch, all that stuff. Hey, I got two great guests with me. It's Trooper Galactus and Adrian Serrano going to join me. We're going to talk a little bit. Well, spring training is winding down and, well, there are concerns and we'll address some of those and maybe even a couple of good things happened. It's definitely not as happy and celebration of podcasts as it was. Oh, I don't know. Number 96. Okay. Well, first off, let's just get to the fact that, and this is something that Hannah Lamada addressed in her game story today. And that is the White Sox, I believe, are now 10 and 11 in spring training. Who cares? Spring training, but they tend to be losing leads. Now, as she pointed out, it's an issue of the starters are not going very long and the actual starting players in the lineup are leaving. The fact that the White Sox are usually getting out to leads, you could look at it as a positive sign because obviously these guys have been going 9 innings, the regular lineup. So in addition to the fact that we should throw out spring training records, it's probably encouraging that the White Sox, even though they are losing a lot of games, are getting out to good leads. It might reflect well on the regular season. Guys, feeling about how this spring training has gone in terms of the team performance?
I think overall, you got to be decently, outside of the injury news, you're decently positive just in the fact that most of the guys that are regular every day in the lineup have hit. Outside of, Moncada's the one guy that's kind of an outlier that has been struggling a little bit in spring, but this is spring and we've got enough tape on Moncada now to not really be worried about it when it season starts. I think he'll be fine, but it's nice to see Eloy hitting. It's nice to see Andrew Vaughn looking pretty good after the up and down season last year. I think he's hitting over 400 now for the spring. I mean, his batting average doesn't matter in the spring, but you just like to see those guys getting good reps and looking like they're ready for the season, and they're going to kind of have to mash. So it's nice that the offense is kind of looking like they're going to be as good as we expect them to be.
Trooper, what's the vibe?
It feels like we go through this every year. It's spring training. Okay. Like, it doesn't matter. The games don't count. Pitchers are trying things they won't do during the regular season. Everybody's ramping up. Everybody's at different places in their ramp up. And it's a totally unusual year because of the late start. I think one thing we are seeing though, is it looks like there's going to, if things don't change, it looks like the ball is going to be flying out of parks this year. Because, like today's game, Cubs fans get on, start throwing thanks, Sox. We got your second baseman from you. We got Nick Madrigal, and then because Nick Madrigal never hits home runs, and then a couple innings later, you get Danny Mendick parking it, and it's like, well, okay, maybe everybody's going to be knocking it out this year.
Yeah, Xavier Fernandez with a home run. Yes.
Big star.
Xavier Fernandez, I think, has 30 something in his career in the minors.
How about the fact that let's get to stuff that's real, and something that's real is the fact that this rotation is a mess, and I don't think there's any way to look at it. It was a mess, probably going in best case scenario, because the back end was going to be sort of just stitching stuff together with some spit and some dirt and some Scotch tape. Because I'm a really bright guy, I did some quick math. So let me share it with you, fellas. We can count on, let's say, 175 innings for Giolito and for Dylan Cease. So that's 350. 120 from Lynn at this point, and that might be a fingers crossed, but okay. 2/3 of a season, okay. Don't know if he can come back that strong, but okay. Kopech, we're hoping 120. I don't think he can really shoot too far past that, and let's hope he gets there and gets there well. That's 590 innings, 6 starter innings a game. I know in today's game, it's like 3 innings for your starter or whatever. But if you do count on like a quality start expectation, that leaves 382 innings. So we're talking about nearly 400 innings from from guys who aren't really major league starters. Dallas Keuchel, Reynaldo López, Vince Velasquez, Jimmy Lambert, John Parke, Kade
Jonathan
McClure.
Stiever.
I know it's getting scarier and scarier. The ghost of Jonathan Stiever. How? Here's a setup question. How are we feeling about this rotation?
I think we kind of saw a little bit of a sign of it today. Like Velasquez looked okay in his first time through the lineup, actually looked pretty good his first time through the lineup, but like not a lot of guys have seen him. It's a lot of spring training, you're seeing a bunch of guys, you don't really have time to make a game plan, but like pretty quickly it looked like they had a game plan against them the second time through, and they had an early hook to kind of let them get out of there with some good vibes going into the season, which I'm fine with. But like we're really kind of banking a lot on Dallas and Reynaldo López to kind of have like come back to good seasons this year, to really like, unless the offense is just going to smash, and maybe if the ball is juiced again, like, well, maybe Eloy's going to hit 50 home runs and none of this is going to matter, and it's going to be fine, and they're just going to mash their way to a division title, which is still their division to lose, even with the Austin Meadows, the Detroit thing. But you can't look at it objectively and not be concerned about what happens once Kopech hits 100 innings, hopefully if everything goes great and he has 100 great innings, you're very happy, but like they're not going to push him too much further past that, I don't think.
Okay, in Adrian's scenario where the ball's juicing that, okay, let's say a 5 ERA is good. Trooper, are you encouraged by this rotation? It appears, I'm sorry, Adrian, let's talk some more, because I think Trooper may have frozen on us. So now he's back. I'm not sure if he heard me, but do you have thoughts on our starting rotation? Okay, it looks like he's out. So we're going to just keep sort of winging it, and Trooper will just yell when he's back. Here we go. This is a point and shoot podcast, no doubt about it. Adrian, the situation is such that you've got this rotation that, I was actually starting to turn the corner and feel a little good about. I was starting to get some good vibes with Reynaldo, and thinking that he can keep it to maybe a 4 or better ERA, that this, not the magic LASIK or whatever, but just that, that he might actually be in what is, we sort of forget, this is a contract drive for him too. I mean, he needs to make his next deal, whether with the White Sox or somewhere else, that he might actually step up and pitch well. I mean, there was a time where he was sort of on the level of the Giolitos of the world, and he has fallen since. But boy, then just about that time, you're thinking, what? This weird Scotch tape, like sort of just putting together the sort of 3, 4, 5 or 4, 5 of this rotation was looking like it might be solid enough. Well, then you have Lance Lynn, who now, best case scenario, I mean, really, you're hoping you get him back full strength in 2 months, and he's a guy who's not, I'm not going to ding him for it, but I mean, he's not at peak age. He's not in peak physical shape. So he might actually take a little bit more time to get as right as he needs to be. That injury is something that might really loom rough at the start of this season. The rotation is not going to carry the White Sox the way it did a year ago.
No, yeah. I mean, we knew coming into the season that losing Rodon and his 5 WAR last year, like we were going to need Lynn, Giolito, and Cease to kind of just do what they did last year, which was really great, and already losing Lynn for, a month and a half to 2 months is already kind of putting you behind that. Luckily, like they do still have a pretty good bullpen, so they're not really expecting somebody like Reynaldo to go out there and pitch 7 shutout innings, like if you give me 4.5, 4 1/3 strong innings, like, and not let us get too far behind, we're in every game, and our bullpen's going to be pretty good to hopefully shut it down.
I wonder if the bullpen thought, like when some of these guys signed on and said, man, this is great, I'm going to be in such an awesome bullpen, that they realized that they would be asked to throw like 2 innings instead of 1, or 3 innings instead of 2. Because boy, the amount that they're going to have to carry this team, and it, listen, it's capable. If you can get to, even the 5 innings, you still feel pretty good with this bullpen, especially if a couple of the guys that we don't know for sure can do click. But it's still, now we've managed to, with the rotation weakness, now, we're going to be stressing the bullpen to a degree, and Liam Hendricks can't be throwing 2 innings in May. I mean, maybe in September. Okay. But, it is, it's a little nerve wracking knowing going in that we're, that we're sort of limping a little bit. And I don't know if, yes, Trooper, go ahead.
Okay, you can hear me. Hooray!
Yes.
Look, what we're we're seeing is basically, the lack of due diligence on the part of front office, because we were discussing before how, everybody knew, including Rick Hahn, it was out there in the open. What did we need in the offseason? And only now has right field been addressed. Second base was kind of addressed. They finally, thankfully, addressed backup catcher. But starting pitching was like the one where there's still not really a satisfactory answer. I had nothing nice to say about Vince Velasquez a couple of weeks ago. I still have nothing nice to say about that pickup. It was not a good major league solution. And it's been very frustrating because there's a lot of people, and I get it, there's a lot of people who want to be very, very upbeat and optimistic about everything the White Sox do. And it's like, okay, yes, we lost Rodon, but Kopech is replacing in the rotation. And it's like, okay, right. But when you say that, you make several assumptions. You make, first of all, the assumption that everybody who was perfectly healthy for the most part last year is going to continue to be perfectly healthy. Yeah. You make the assumption that they're going to be as good as they are. Like, you make the assumption that Dylan Cease's advancements are for real, and as opposed to maybe, you hope that's not the apex of his career, but we don't know. And now he's coming across the highest workload of his career, which is good, but can you count on it? We're gonna find out. Keuchel is last year this. It's like we're making too many assumptions, and Vince Velasquez is not a good backup for those assumptions.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, speaking to that, like, we already knew coming in, just doing the math, that one of the two of Kopech and Keuchel were going to have to be about 2 WAR better than they were last year, just to make up for Rodon not being there. Vince Velasquez is the kind of signing that, like, all right, he's got talent. Like, he's a great guy to bring in and see what you can get if he's one of 2 to 3 guys that you bring into camp and see, what we can develop out of. But like, when that's your only major starting pitching acquisition, and you knew going into the offseason that starting pitching was probably your number one need, it starts to look a little bit more suspect. And like, why are guys like Chris Archer out there for $3 million and you couldn't pull the trigger on something like that just as a flyer? Like, there should have been more guys coming into camp, like, just because you knew that Kopech at the very least was going to be on an innings limit, and you don't know what you're going to get out of Keuchel, even though he continues to be very optimistic that he's going to show that it was an aberration last year.
If he can only pitch like that, then I'm behind him.
This is just frustrating. This is where the mistakes start catching up. Like the stuff that we've been positive about for about the past week. Trading Kimbrel to the Dodgers and getting Pollock in return. It's like, yeah, that's great. That feels good. It's a great return. It was born of a mistake. Yeah. All right. It was born of the mistake of picking up Kimbrel in the first place. You were able to get something out of it. But let's face it, let's say all things being equal, you went into the offseason without Craig Kimbrel, and you could have picked up any free agent you wanted. I mean, don't you think that you could have maybe done better than a 34-year-old outfielder who has severe injury troubles? You probably could have, but this is what we have to settle for, because this good move was born of a bad decision. And it's the same thing with so many other things. Like, you trade Zach Collins for Reese McGuire, and yes, it feels good to actually get a legitimate backup catcher of some sort, but it's again born of the mistake of, first of all, assuming Zach Collins was a catcher to begin with ever. And second of all, the fact that you used a first-round draft pick on him. And the story goes on and on, where there's just, we're trying to take victory laps for good moves that are born of bad decisions. And it's just like, look, you don't get a whole lot of credit. Like, if you've ever seen The Seven Samurai, where the character played by Toshiro Mifune, like, leaves his post, goes out, pulls a guy, grabs his rifle, comes back and says, "Hey, look at me, look what I did. I'm the hero." And they were like, "No, you actually screwed up, and you're going to get a bunch of people killed because you actually made a serious mistake, and you don't get credit for the good thing that happened." Like, it feels like the same thing, where it's much as I want to give Hahn some credit for making a good move, it's basically just damage control when you really, really bore down into the things that have been happening that are positive. And that's kind of leaves you with a unsatisfied feeling.
You look at the fact that just from a balance sheet standpoint, the Kelly Graven sightings could basically have just been the money that was devoted to Craig Kimbrell. So you're right. It is a comedy of errors. And I do want to, before we go to break, let you know, Trooper, that I have revised my grade. I don't know. I was giddy when we were talking about Rick Hahn, when I was shaming everyone for giving him starters. I don't know what I was thinking. I had some buzz going. Apparently, yes, he clearly is not getting. He's not getting a B or a B plus from me. I don't know what I was thinking. I might be actually the hardest grade. See, I've recovered myself. For some reason, I was out of body last podcast, and now I realize that I get to be the harsh, angry person once again. Yeah, I would think C at best, because you're right.
I think
if
it's-
anything,
yeah,
this T has it's treaded water, maybe. And then you see
I
with
think-
Lynn, maybe
Yeah, I
taking
think
a step back.
with the McGuire Collins, I think a C plus is still where he's at. Like those are like not terrible, but like Trooper said, like it's of his own making. So like you can't get an improved grade on that, but like you've done okay with your bad situation. Like at least these are guys that are somewhat solutions in some of these issues.
Let's take a quick break and try to squeeze in a couple
I'm
more
sticking with my
issues.
B-minus, I guess.
And we'll be back in just a second. Stick with us. We got a little more to discuss. Hey, White Sox fans. Well, if you missed the big news about our merger, if you're just joining us now, well, you got to rewind. You got to start at the front and find out what's going on with Side Sox. But anyway, we're here. I'm here with Adrian Serrano and Trooper Galactus. We are talking, we're talking about some moves. Good, bad. I've revised my grade toward Rick Hahn. But even as I'm doing that and downgrading him, Trooper teased it. We've addressed it a little bit, but we did manage to turn in a guy who can't hit and can't catch, but is yet listed on the roster as catcher, and Zach Collins. Sent him north of the border or to wherever their AAA team, because he's not going to Toronto, for a Reese McGuire. And aside from, all the jokes, this is a guy who can play some defense, can hit. He seems to be a guy who's fairly ideal as a backup catcher. So again, Han sort of turning disaster of his own making into sort of like a win or getting back to surface level. But at least he did that.
Yeah, as a connoisseur of catchers and a catcher myself in my youth, like this guy has every tool you would want defensively, like, pop time, side to side, lateral move. He's got an absolute cannon. You can find some videos of him just throwing people out from his, one knee position. So it's like to have a catcher able to throw people out already is a bonus on this team. And we weren't getting many offensive, improvements from Collins and Zavala as it was. So having a guy like that, even if he can just twice a week get out there defensively, or 3 times a week, and let Grandal do some DHing maybe to keep him fresh and in the lineup, I think is going to be a very much a bonus to the lineup.
Is there a fantasy scenario, guys, where the White Sox are able to, we're seeing a lot of deals thrown out there. Of course, there's the Chaminade discussions before about what the White Sox could put together to get. Obviously, they couldn't put together a good enough package to beat the Padres, and that's probably going to happen another dozen times, or maybe it's just going to happen in perpetuity because it's just the way it is with the White Sox. But however, that said, you got Mike Rodolfo, you got a guy who might have some promise. You got some guys that maybe you can deal from strength to just get an arm, maybe even something maybe a little bit better than Vince Velasquez, who again they signed for $3 million. And guaranteed him a roster spot. Not sure what scenario, what universe that made sense, but they did it. They need arms. I know every team needs arms, but is there any conceivable scenario? Is there any player in your mind, aside from the obvious of Frankie Montas, which I'm not seeing how the White Sox can get, where the White Sox can add an arm that isn't, again, Jimmy Lambert, Kade McClure, whatever?
So there's always possibilities, but the problem that the White Sox are running into, as they ran into with Oakland, is that the possibilities are all the same possibilities that other teams have, and other teams need pitching as well, which means that you have to come up with a more attractive trade package than those other teams. And the White Sox are in this position where their best trade chips are pieces that are already on their rosters. And so like Andrew Vaughn already on the roster. And it would appear that, a team like the Oakland A's doesn't want a guy like Vaughn because they want guys who don't have their service clock started. Really, the prospects they got in return for Minaya, the White Sox probably technically could have equaled that offer on the sheer value proposition, but the White Sox don't have the kind of prospects that Oakland was looking for. And this is what is a result of the White Sox secondary prospects all falling flat last year and not really getting the kind of development they need out of the really young players. Like that's why I was very, very high on I believe like Wilfred Barris, where you're talking about an 18-year-old kid who really showed you he was like the best hitter that the White Sox had in the ACL. And that's the kind of player that I think teams are valuing in these trades, a guy who's showing something and he's ahead of the aging curve. So somebody that has a few years to continue to develop and has tools that they can build on. And the White Sox are just really lacking that in their system. And, we can talk about trading Andrew Vaughn and how valuable Andrew Vaughn would be in a trade. And from a technical, pure mathematical standpoint, that's true. But is it what other teams value? And it would appear that the White Sox just do not what the White Sox have that other teams value. I mean, we just saw it with the Zach Collins trade. The Blue Jays valued Collins's extra option over McGuire's ability to be their third or fourth catcher. And, when I look at that trade, on the one hand, it's like, oh, cool, we got something for a player that I thought was completely worthless to us. But on the other hand, it's like you look at where the guy is coming from and it's like, oh, that's what it feels like to have more players than you know what to do with. And that must feel nice.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why they finally bucked the trend in this last draft and took some prep players and took some young guys. And like, that's really the actual currency of the league. Like you can see like a trade like the Cubs and the Padres for Yu Darvish, like, it's a bunch of 15-year-olds and we don't know if they're going to become anything, but like they're willing to take a bet on that as a rebuilding organization, these young guys. And maybe Wes Kath or some of these other guys can have a great start to the minor league season and become more valuable as we go. But like you try to start trading those guys and then the 30th ranked farm system becomes even lower than that. So hopefully they continue to draft young guys and just fill the system with as many young lottery tickets as possible. At least like you have the currency at that point with most of your talent on your team. But yeah, I think I think it's basically you're either saying I'm going to trade Andrew Vaughn or everybody's going to ask for Kopech, but you're not in any position to even think about moving Kopech anymore. But those are like break glass in case of emergency options at this point. I don't think you can even really legitimately take those options seriously until you have be something behind them.
Yeah.
And how frustrating is it for the White Sox to be in this position, knowing that during rebuild, they were not using their international allotment. I know they were under the Luis Robert penalty for a while there, but they still were just like taking what they gave away $250,000.
Just scraping whatever you can get.
Just to get rid of Nate Jones's buyout, right? And it's like, okay, you get people that are just like, oh, whatever, it's $250,000. You just get like nothing on. You know what? You get young players that other teams value.
Yes.
Oh my God, you might actually have had a couple more of them. Because you know what? You know how much Wilfred Barris cost? $200,000.
Yeah.
And he's the kind of guy other teams value in trades.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And they got nothing prospects in return. The prospects they got in return in some of these deals where they were shedding their international bonus money were out of the system within a year. They were already flopped prospects. Why are you? And it's just so stupid that during a rebuild, when your most precious assets are your most precious asset is your ability to stock young talent, you were just passing on actually stocking young talent.
Yes.
That was just absurd. And we're seeing the price that they pay for that now.
Fill the maximum number of uniforms. That's like it would seem to be a basic. Fill the clubhouse. Think about the fact that last year at the trade deadline, Connor Pilkington, arguably at the time, the best starter, the most ready starter. He just doesn't fit the age of some of these guys we're talking about. He's a little bit older guy, just made Cleveland. So his service time starts now, but they got to choose that still. He didn't come with those sort of restrictions. There are organizations that have more than just one Connor Pilkington. We should have several Connor Pilkingtons to be able to deal, knowing that, come on, it's a lottery ticket. Maybe he pays off, maybe he doesn't. We should have a bunch of those guys, the Wilfred Barrises of the world. We should have a bunch of them, and we have the pantries very bare for those guys. And it's just such a shame because it really does handcuff it. And it's really having a real impact on this rotation because the White Sox cannot flip any resources really measurable resources for guys they really need in this contention window. And you're just afraid that the contention window is going to just slide shut while they're trying to restock their system to make these types of deals. It's very frustrating.
Honestly, I think like the easy argument is to say it's all money related, but I think sometimes like the fact that they really trust themselves in trades more than they trust themselves drafting, it seems like, or signing some of these guys. Like they really just don't trust their own system to develop talent and to find talent. And they identify
problem.
one guy, sometimes there's one guy that they, key in on, and that's our guy, we're going to go get him, like Oscar Colas or, Yoki Cespedes. But like, that's why they're overspending on those guys when other teams are going in with the same amount of money and coming out with 12 to 14 guys to fill their system up that, maybe if 3 of them work out, like it's fine because it all worked out, money wise, their value outpays anything that you paid for that entire class of, international prospects. But yeah, it just really feels like there's something that they don't trust in themselves.
It's the same philosophy they're using they used in the international draft all these years that failed them in the amateur draft for years, where they were trying to draft quick to the majors talent. They were trying to draft guys who they perceived as close to major league ready. So what happens, instead of going out and getting 16-year-old players out of these places where there's going to be a 5-year development window for them, but they could turn into the next Fernando Tatis Jr., instead of stocking up on those guys, they spent all their money on guys who were already 21, 22 years old, like Yoelqui Cespedes, like Oscar Colas, like Gilbert Sanchez, guys who have to basically matriculate on their talent right away, and they have no time. And that's why fans get, especially with Cespedes, fans got very, very over optimistic about Cespedes' ability to. It's like, 2022
next year.
Come on, like, yes, does he have the physical talent to do that? I suppose so, but you guys, like, people really got to stop thinking that the 100% solution just happens all the time, and it doesn't. Like, Cespedes had known red flags that he would need to work out, and he still does. And he's going to be 24 this season. I don't even know if he'll make it to the majors this year. But these are guys who can't afford to stumble because they lose their value very quickly. Like Yoelqui Cespedes is probably almost any stretch of the imagination, one of our top 3 prospects. And he doesn't really have much value in trade because other teams don't want prospects like him.
He's too old already. They can't wait 2 years for him to be 28 and hope he makes it. But changing from the prospects really quick, one guy we didn't touch on we talked a little about it last time, the Crochet loss. And there was a very interesting interview with Yasmani Grandal today when he brought up, he's like, I talked to a lot of people around the league and they don't often talk about other people on our team, but like the person that gets brought up all the time by opposing players on other teams is Garrett Crochet. And he's like, I take that to mean, a lot. Like, so like, I don't think we're, necessarily putting enough weight on, this is Grandal's words, we're not putting enough weight on like how big of a loss that is to our team this year, like just to have that weapon.
Yeah. And what you guys were speaking to before Adrian's clever aside there for sure, is a pet peeve of mine. It's come up in the minor league, our minor league podcast many times with Darren Black's probably come up with podcasts across the way. It is dereliction of duty, that when you're a team that spends like the White Sox and pretend, okay, this year they're not, once every couple decades, there is dereliction of duty to not have 2 DSL teams, not have 2 Arizona teams. It costs you, it's negligible cost. You're allowed to do it. Are the White Sox not allowed to do it, but the Cubs are? It seems preposterous that you don't just double your lottery tickets, you double your prospects, you double the what's in your pantry by just fielding a team. Now you can field it with poor players, sure, I guess, and I know the money still only stretches so much, but isn't that why you suit guys up to see what happens?
And you got this beautiful facility in Arizona that's meant to hold this many people, so you're not really like building new grounds for them or anything. You're just letting them
Camelback, letting them go to work. No, you can squeeze them both in. That's true.
You're letting them go to work where you already have it not being used fully, so like it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, real quick, bouncing back to Crochet. I think this organization it's another case of the White Sox just with that get them straight to the major leagues as fast as possible, and we can use them, and then we'll develop them while they're in the major leagues philosophy that keeps doing disservice to their players, because people seem to think that Chris Sale is the norm rather than the exception. And I keep seeing like, oh, they did it with Chris Sale. Well, there's a reason there's only one Chris Sale. And, it's like when Garrett Crochet was drafted, he had a dozen starts in college. And he had spent most of his time as a reliever. And then he gets brought up into the major leagues as a reliever. And when people are telling us, oh, yeah, they'll just stretch him out like they did Kopech. Kopech had a long career in the college and in the minors as a starter. And him being a reliever was the exception, not the norm, as opposed to Crochet, where, he's been a reliever most of the time. And with his arm action, that's the kind of arm action that guys typically wind up hurt. And I don't know. I just feel like he's a victim of the White Sox over-aggressive development, and because of their constant wish casting, because of their, because of how they disperse their resources.
Yeah, but Trooper, when you run the list of the guys who got from each draft class in the majors first, the White Sox are all over it. And doesn't it make you swell with pride?
No.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. No, you're right. Because you're right. Some of these guys are just, once in a lifetime talents. And, Chris Sale, yeah, he was a starter in college. Granted, it was a, junior college. It wasn't any sort of big deal. But yeah, he was used to the workload. Kopech only was a reliever because he's working his way back from taking a year off with the pandemic and then coming back from major surgery. That's the reason. And
most people will tell you that it's kind of miraculous that Chris Sale went as long as he did before becoming an injury-prone person like he is now later in his career. Like everybody pointed to there's no way that this guy and this pitching motion is going to stay healthy, and somehow he did long enough for us to get maximum value out of him.
We found a unicorn, and people and fans think that the Manticore is right around the corner from that, and the Griffin is right around the corner from that. And hey, we'll find the Chupacabra not long after that.
Yeah. Well, get well soon, Chris Sale, and your busted rib. We'll see you at some point in the season, but not early. White Sox. We got a big week. We got a big week on Southside Sox. We got podcasts probably almost every day. We got 10 stories a day. It's ridiculous. It's an embarrassment of riches. I hope you're all enjoying it, reading, and sometimes even watching and listening. We'll have more. We'll be right back at you tomorrow with a podcast. We're going to debut our minor league podcast for a second season with Darren Black. We'll be doing stuff pregame and postgame on opening day. We got all sorts of coverage, which we'll outline for that pregame podcast, which perhaps Adrian and Trooper will join for that. If not, hey, bid them adieu. It's great to have both of you guys. And again, big week. I hope in spite of the injuries, there's still a lot of excitement in White Sox land, and we will be trying to feed the buzz of that excitement all week long. Thanks, everybody.